Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. What I would like to do tonight is address a subject that I have not addressed before, except in a by-the-way sort of way. It's entitled Life with a Sober Alcoholic. What is it like after sobriety? I would like to begin with a little story that may indicate what life is like with a practicing alcoholic, and then I'll end up this talk with life with a sober alcoholic. There was an old couple. He was 90, she's 89. And she had begun to gripe and moan and whine about her health. This wasn't right, that wasn't right, and the other thing. So he insisted that she go to the hospital for a complete 5-day checkup. She had not had one in 37 years. So she went. And it was everything. CAT scan, dog scan, upper, lower, GIs, everything. And at the end of the week, she came home, and about a week later, when all the results were in, they mailed them to her family physician. He called her down and read the results, and there were quite a few of them. She had to pay attention to this, that, and the other thing. Anyway, when he finished the list, he put it down, looked at her, and after a little bit of a pause, he coughed and said, I don't quite know how to tell you this next thing, except to tell you. I don't know how else. You're pregnant. She's 89. And that dear old soul stared at him for about 6 straight minutes without a word. It was an eternity. And finally she shook herself out of the trance and said, may I use your telephone? And he said, well, of course you can use the phone. She called home, and the old man, an alcoholic, is about half in the bag. And when he answered, she said, you old goat, you went and got me pregnant. And he said, with whom am I speaking? And then the alcoholic gets sober. What happens after sobriety? One of the horrors of this field of alcoholism, it's a rather frightening statistic. Most divorces in alcoholic homes occur after the sobriety of the alcoholic. And I think the reason is that the damage is so deep and has become so ingrained, not only in the alcoholic, but in the non-alcoholics who live with him, that it's just a brand new ball game, and many times they just can't cope. They're just brand new people in the house. And the non-alcoholic has become so used to functioning with a damaged human being and become damaged himself or herself that the situation is impossible. Now, ladies and gentlemen, tonight when I use the word he, that's purely grammatical. It means one, male or female. And when I use the word alcoholic, it has to do with any addiction at all, alcohol addiction or drug addiction. So if you will allow me, I'll use he, meaning the alcoholic, either male or female, and alcoholic, meaning addict, one who is addicted to any chemical. The necessity is that the whole family has become sick, therefore the whole family needs to get well. There is no such thing as 6 people automatically getting better because one does. It's just too much to expect. And a lot of people wonder why this is not the happy family because old dad or mom or the child or a parent or whoever gets well. I have been damaged by the drinking of another. You've seen that in other places, other films, other meetings, other everything. It is just no guarantee that because somebody else gets well, I'm automatically going to get well. Whole families get sick. Whole families need treatment. They need care. They need therapy of some kind if the whole family is to get well and survive. Each person must get well and learn, I am responsible for me. I am my first responsibility before God. I'm not responsible for you. I may have certain obligations toward you, as a parent does toward a child toward a parent, a spouse toward a spouse. But basically, I am responsible for myself. I always tell patients and their families in treatment, you, the alcoholic, absolutely must, if you want to survive this terminal disease, you must get well, whether you have their cooperation and support or not. And you family members had better get a handle on your own spiritual, emotional, and mental well-being, whether he or she gets sober or not. I'm responsible for me. Now, once you get a handle on your well-being and you get a handle on your well-being, now we can get together and cooperate and communicate and try to solve family problems. One of the best-known names in the field of alcoholism, Claudia Black, gave a brilliant talk to a group of patients one day, and she wound about issues that concern adult children of alcoholics. And she wound up saying this: all of this is good, all of this information has been validated, the research is excellent, and these things that I have shared with you are true. Not now for you. Your business now is to get a handle on your sobriety and then try to solve family questions. And so, any of you here listening to me right now, if you are an addict of any kind, or if you belong to the family of one who has the problem, your prime responsibility is to get well yourself. Get well yourself. How do we do this? From outside. Once I acknowledge that I have been helpless in the face of this thing, all of my own attempts to help another and to help myself have been futile, I have to reach outside myself for help. The primary therapy for those who live with an alcoholic or have been affected in any way by an alcoholic is Al-Anon, the sister therapy to AA, which helps people with the exact same principles of recovery to function normally. Now, we must get help in Al-Anon and begin to start, to commence a brand new life. I have got to start to change everything that has happened up here, let's say over a period of years. I have to change my attitude, which governs my behavior, so that my behavior can change. Once I grasp a few principles of truth, even though feelings remain, my behavior can change in spite of them. I learned that I have to do a whole lot of things, whether I feel like it or not, if I am to attain the goal of personal health and then family well-being. It is hard to change, awfully, awfully hard to change. But I heard a man once say, this jaded world suspects change. They maintain really that a leopard cannot change his spots. And yet in the world of alcoholism, we see change as normal. He used to say, the miraculous is commonplace in AA and Al-Anon. So even though it is hard to begin to change one's life after it's been established, why is it hard for us to get rid of bad habits? For gracious sake, we spent a lifetime acquiring them. We love them. They're buddies. And to begin to upend my entire self and make a major change is very difficult. Bill Wilson's very definition of sobriety. What do you mean by a spiritual awakening, he was asked. And his answer was a profound change in personality. And like all journeys, it begins with the first step. Like all buildings, it begins with the first shovelful of dirt. And as somebody once said, Rome certainly was not built in a day, and it was. What do you say to your kids when they express impatience? I want to be a doctor, Dad. Why do I have to go to school? Why can't I be one now? Why can't I start operating next week? And so on. No. You plow through secondary school, you plow through college, all that pre-med stuff, you go through med school, you prepare before you execute. And so it is here. To change a family, there must be a beginning. My attitudes must become different. I have lived with the primary attitude of guilt and shame. I must learn I'm dealing with addiction. Nobody's guilty. Nobody's guilty. The alcoholic is not guilty. I am not guilty. And yet, as we were saying so many, many times before, everybody feels guilt. The addict and every single one who lives with him feels guilt. And yet, the disease happens. It's like cancer. It happens. It's like emphysema. It happens. Nobody sets out to get emphysema or alcoholism or cancer. It happens. And once it happens, the disease dictates a lot of the behavior that follows. It also dictates, the very nature of the illness dictates responses to it on the part of people who are ignorant of what it is all about. And so I have to begin this horrible thing of upending and reversing my own life. I have to begin to see that the alcoholic is not necessarily all that evil that I thought he was, that he too is a victim, just as I am a victim of his disease. I have to see that no one really is to blame for the disease, even though there are a whole lot of repercussions from some of the horrid behavior. I must conquer loneliness, boredom, years of hostility and frustration and bewilderment and anger and sometimes hatred. I have to try somehow to get over and not just ignore, but to put aside the hundreds, maybe even the thousands of broken promises. Horrible things. Here I am trying to build a future on somebody I never did have any trust for. All of a sudden he or she says I'm sober, and I'm asked to do a whole lot of reversal in my feelings and my own behavior. Almost impossible. The disappointments, the resentments, the terrible resentments, the memories that I have of the past, the insults, the emotional batterings, the put-downs, all of that has built into me islands of pain. They just don't disappear. And I don't have the emotional strength to do it all by myself. If ever you could conceive of the need of a power greater than yourself, try to get rid of these things all by yourself. How do you forgive infidelity? How in the name of heavens can you ever forgive incest? How can you forgive physical beatings and so on? No, we have to reach outside for a strength to overcome such things, if indeed we want to hang on to this family. But you know the horror of it all? We were willing to go through all of this in the hopes that one day we'd have a happy family, and the ground floor has just been built, the sobriety of the other, and then it all breaks up. I don't want to give up my martyrdom. I don't want to give up my scapegoat. I don't want to give up the perverse pleasure that I got from advertising my misery. Above all, I don't want to relinquish any of the responsibilities that I've picked up, and now this clown wants to come back and take over. I remember one incident in the life of an alcoholic family. The man was sober about 3 years. His 19-year-old daughter came in at 5 a.m. on a Sunday morning from a date, and old Dad hit the roof. And he was reading the riot act when Mama came downstairs, entered the room, and entered the argument, and this was her comment. How dare you enter into her life now? She's mine. I raised her. Where were you during her teen years when she needed you? Flat on your back, drunk somewhere. Oh, no, you don't step in now and give her correction and try to act like a father. She belongs to me. Bug off. Guess what notions and what attitudes toward marriage and family life that 19-year-old is going to take to the altar when she marries within perhaps the next 4, 5, 6 years? Now, there's a lot of horror in the alcoholic home that has to be overcome, and it all begins here and here, in the attitude and the thinking, which will help to change the behavior. Let me never forget, I'm responsible for me. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. You know what I can't change? And I've proven this all through the drinking years. I can't change another human being. I've tried. I've manipulated. I've even allowed myself to be manipulated. All of those games that happen in alcoholic homes, all that has to go and be replaced with honesty of behavior. I once heard a woman say, after her husband got sober, she said it's a nightmare. When he was drinking, we knew exactly what to say and what not to say. We knew exactly what to do and what not to do. Now he's sober and it's a circus. We don't know what, he's everywhere. And parents try to make their children behave in such a way when he's drinking. Don't say this to your father when he's drinking. Don't say that to your father. You know, even animals know when we're drinking. Kids and animals know just like that. I know several cases of this. A man would walk in the front door coming from work, and his wife from the kitchen would scream, "You've been drinking." He thinks she's got a pact with Satan, or else eyes behind her head. But what has happened, the family dog is at the front window every day. When the old man gets out of the car, he knows just like that when the old man's been drinking. And he takes a nosedive under the sofa. He doesn't want old dad to twist his ears. Mama sees this and goes out in the kitchen to pare potatoes as soon as the front door opens and says, "You've been drinking." He doesn't know it, but the mutt's been giving him away for 4 years. I functioned in such a way as to not precipitate his drinking. And yet, have you ever heard this or have you ever said it? If I say yes, I'm wrong. If I say no, I'm wrong. And I've heard many a wife say, "I'm damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't." You see, when the old man runs out of excuses and alibis, he deliberately precipitates an argument so he can leave in anger and drink. He has no other reason. And of course the spouse thinks he or she's going crazy. I can't say or do anything right. All of this, ladies and gentlemen, all of this is in the background. All of this is in the life of an alcoholic home. All of this has contributed to every single member of the family getting sick. Now we must change to this new phenomenon, he's sober. And very often, we still want to be the responsible one. Be careful what you say or do to your dad. We don't want to drive him to drink. I'm afraid to say this or say that. It's liable to upend him. It's liable to disturb this fragile new thing that we call sobriety. We can't do that. But once you get into Al-Anon and share the experiences, the strength, and the hope of others, you begin to see, I am my own person. I am not responsible for his sobriety. I begin to learn that even though the alcoholic is not responsible for his disease, he is responsible for his recovery. He and he alone. And I must begin to develop as my own person. I have to forget blame. I have to begin to trust. Well, God, he's made so many promises and broken them. That's all right, trust. Trust. You have to. Somebody once said you have to begin somewhere. It is different this time. If you look, you can see a sincere desire to be well. I have to concentrate on me. I can change only me. But if I change enough, you know what I can do? I can inspire you to want to change as I did. I will never change another human being. How many of you people, when you were courting, ever looked at your beloved and said, "Darling, I will spend my life making you happy"? No, you won't. You can't make anyone happy. And this is the frustration and the shame in the hearts of people. I've tried, I have sacrificed my life for him. He stayed drunk. Why do you want me to continue to do this? See these things that have to be overcome. And there are new beginnings that have to be started every single day because these thoughts are there, maybe 19, 20 years of them. And they have to be fought against and fought against and fought against. And so I always say this to patients in treatment. A blade of grass will grow a day's growth in a day's time. That's all other things being equal. That's provided there is sun and rain and food. In the spiritual life, we will grow, you and I, we will grow a day's growth in a day's time, and some days it seems like inches. Ladies and gentlemen, there's no such thing as instant sanctity. You don't go away once a year on a 48-hour weekend AA retreat and expect sanctity. It takes work, day-to-day work. What is the work? Trying to live the 12 principles of your program, which are exactly the same for AA and Al-Anon. Patience, patience, patience. I knew a man who always said about treatment, time is of the essence. One day, a priest asked him, why am I not making progress? He was just so impatient. And this man said, Father, how many years did it take you to get into the condition that brought you here? We will not get over a lifetime of damage to the human soul in a matter of days, weeks, or months. In fact, old Doc Green, from whom I learned the stuff in the Chalk Talk, he used to say it takes a minimum of 2 years to get the I back over the E, intellect predominating over emotions. And I always say to newly recovered alcoholics, if you don't believe that, of course you don't have to, and I can't make you. But I'll tell you what you do. Stay sober 5 years and look back at those first 2. You'll want to climb under the rug. You were an emotional yo-yo during those times. All right. A thing that is almost impossible to do, look on the bright side of things and people. I remember a remarkable woman saying to me, acknowledging the fact that her husband had a jillion faults, and they were real. She said, I made myself look at his good points and praise him for them. I all but ignored the bad. I just concentrated on the good. Look on the good side of things and people. Have faith that something will work. Faith is a part of existence. Without it, we're slobs. We're almost nothing. 2 nuns were driving a VW Beetle in the countryside, and they ran out of gas. And the older nun turned to the younger one and said, walk down the road and see if there's a gas station anywhere, and if not, come on back. Somebody will stop. We'll get help. So about a quarter of a mile down the road, right around the bend, there was one of these little one-pump country gas stations, and she explained what was wrong. The fellow said, no problem, sister. We have a lot of gas here. And he looked around for a can or a container to put it in. He couldn't find one. And he said, wait a minute. And he went into the cabin where he lived, a little one-room cabin. He came out rather embarrassed with the pot from under his bed. And he said, it's the only thing I could find, sister. He was so embarrassed. She said, forget it. Put it in there. I'll have it back to you in 5 minutes. So he fills the pot with gasoline. Down the road she goes. They lift the hood, unscrew the gas tank cap, and she's pouring this gasoline out of the chamber pot into the gas tank. This 18-wheeler comes barreling down the road, and he took a look at the screeched on the brakes, pulled on the emergency, jumped out, ran back, and leaned over her shoulder just as he saw her shaking the last few drops into the gas tank. He said, good Lord, sister, don't I wish I had your faith. Faith. Then begins the almost impossible. It's called communication. We have to let each other know what we feel. Sometimes we hold back, and sometimes bad things result from that. For example, in the 1930s, I can remember this as a kid, it's true, when aviation was beginning to come into its own. For a fee, I think it was $5, you could go to a little airport and take a ride in an airplane, one of these open cockpit bi-wing planes around your city. And this old Scot, he was about 90, and he and his wife wanted to take a ride in an airplane before they died, so they went to this little airport, looked up a young pilot, and the old man said, we'd like to take a ride in your airplane. Well, he said, fine, it'll be $5 for the hour. Oh, he said, we didn't intend to pay. He said, you got to be kidding. It takes money to run that thing. And they argued and argued and argued. He's got an Excedrin headache. Finally, he looked at the old Scot. He said, shut up. I'll take you. Shut up. But he said, give me a break. You get scared and yell, you pay half. Well, they finally agreed. So he stuffed the old couple into the rear cockpit. He said, now, if you get scared and yell, half. All right. He climbed up in the pilot's cockpit, and he figured as soon as he revved up the engine, they'd die. Not at all. He got in the air, and it's kind of a game. He's going to make them yell. Did a few barrel rolls, nothing. A few loop-the-loops, nothing. A few figure eights, nines, tens, nothing. The $5 is gone. The $5 worth of gas is used. It is not a game. It is a challenge. He's going to make him yell. He flew under a bridge, scared himself. He had never done that. Nothing. He did everything he could think of, a couple of power dives. Finally, the old buggy's out of gas. He had to bring it in, and it sputtered as he landed. And he was furious with himself. And he hopped out. He's not even a peep out of him. The old man hopped out behind it. Now, he said, but I damn near yelled when the old lady fell out. Lack of communication can do things. One of the most difficult things on earth for someone who has spent a lifetime trying to change somebody else, I am trying to make him stop drinking, is now to accept the other as is. It bugs me he's out so much. What is this? Meetings. Who are all these people? He seems to think more of them than he does of us here at home. He's always yakking AA. He's always at a meeting. And what I have to understand is that in the initial stages of recovery, far more therapy rather than less is essential. He must be there. You know, I got far more attention when he was drinking. I know a man who got so sick as a result of the drinking of his spouse, he actually said this to his wife after she got sober. We had a happier marriage when you were drinking. So help me. How sick can you get? And then you have to accept the other as is. Many alcoholics are never forgiven. I heard a man say quite recently, listen to this, my wife was my best friend when I was drinking. Today, she will not forgive me anything from the drinking years. He said, I have made all of my amends, even to her, and she won't accept it. Now, he may or may not have to carry that to his grave, knowing that his wife will not forgive him. But as he says, I cannot change her. I cannot change her. But he is still working at changing himself, and he has changed from a drunk into one of the most magnificent men I have ever known. I know a woman who said, my husband all but ignores me. He seems to be calm and serene and sober. He's facing all kinds of life problems with an inner peace that I find almost incomprehensible. And me, it's almost as if I don't exist. It takes such patience to wait for minute inch by inch by inch growth. I think only big people can do it. Only people with a desire to have a whole family can do that. There's this jealousy of the program, of meetings, of the people. He's talking constantly of people in the program whom he admires. God, there isn't even a word for me, and I put up with him for 26 years, 12 years, 8 years. He's yakking about all these wonderful people who are helping him now, and I kept him alive in order to get there. I have got to think positive, or my own thinking will scuttle me. Belief instead of skepticism. In heaven's names, if he says something, believe it until it's proven otherwise. I believed him before and I got disappointed. It's different now. Believe him. There's a wonderful story about believing people. There's a priest down south in a very poor little old southern town. And he was walking down the main street one day between these two churches, the Slippery Rock Church and Slippery Rock Reformed. And the old southern preacher was coming down out of his house. And he said, Reverend, you know me. I've been here 14 years. I walk between these churches every single day. He said, it's obvious one came from the other. He said, what's the difference? Well, sir, he said, it's a theological difference. He said, over in the Reformed Church, they teach that Pharaoh's daughter say that she found that little baby Moses in the bulrushes, and we say that's what she say. Didn't believe her at all. So it is. What are the virtues essential for growth in my own life and with putting up with others? Patience. Time is of the essence. Time. Courage. Courage to change the things I can. Me. It's the only thing I can change. My own negative thoughts, my own negative attitudes, my own hatred, my own resentments. It's the only thing I can work at. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. If I worked as hard making myself better, and this is personal, I'm not talking about you. If I worked as hard on myself as I mentally work on what's wrong with everybody else and what they ought to do, I could be canonized by perhaps next Thursday. A willingness to listen and learn from the experience of others. An acceptance of what is. And always a hope that this family can be what it should be. Forget about memories of the past. You know what I do? I romanticize about the good. I create a husband who perhaps never existed, all what he was like before the drink entered our lives. May have been a good man, may have been a wonderful man, but we tend to romanticize and create a dream world of wishful thinking. Please let me tell you something. If every person in a family remains true to the ideal of getting well self first and then contributing to the welfare of the family, you will find a love like you never believed existed before. I remember once a good friend of mine said to me years ago, he said, Father, my marriage is done. It's finished. I know that. She knows that. Whole family knows it. It's over. No hope. And he said, I'm not even hoping against hope. The only thing I would want in my life is for my wife one day to understand what was involved. That I'm really not evil. That I actually did and do love her. And that it was this disease that caused it all. He said, will that ever happen? You know what my answer to him was? I said, I can't give you any definite answer about anything except this. Stay sober today, and when tomorrow comes, do it again, and keep doing that, and good things will happen to you. 15 years later, I went to speak at a banquet in Pittsburgh, and he, with his wife on his arm, came up and said hello. To wind up, here's the answer to your prayers, Al-Anon. What are the things I must do to contribute, first of all, to my own well-being and then to the well-being of the family? Get a home group, go regularly to meetings. Meetings, ladies and gentlemen, are like prayer. It is not volume that counts. It's consistency and regularity. 1 minute a day out of the 24-hour-a-day book for alcoholics every day of the year is a whole lot better than praying 6 hours a day for the entire month of January and saying, well, I just took care of 1988. Consistency and a conscientious application of the steps to my life. I have to take my inventory. I have to tell somebody else the exact nature of my wrongs. I have to become willing to make amends. I've always said about that amends step, what happens when I owe an amend to someone who owes me? Who goes first? I go when my conscience says I should, whether they ever make one to me or not. Get a sponsor in whose judgment you trust and follow directions. Ladies and gentlemen, you know the old wheeze in both therapies, AA and Al-Anon. When all else fails, follow directions. Gratitude for today's wellness just bought tomorrow's. And the essential is prayer. Is your family situation impossible? You don't believe it could be done? Make believe. If you don't believe, make believe. You got to start somewhere. You don't have a higher power. I once heard a man say, if you don't have one, borrow mine. It's worked for me for 30 years. And have faith that there is a whole lot more to life than just alcoholism and recovery from it. There's a whole world out there. A whole world out there. Ladies and gentlemen, life is too short to do anything else but this. Life is too short to keep myself miserable. My happiness is in my hands. Not my husband's, not my wife's, not my child's, not my parents'. I am responsible for whether or not I'm a happy person. I am. And so I seek maturity, the thing that says I must survive no matter what happens around me, the thing that says I truly am in control of myself. I do have a handle on life. I'm comfortable with me, whether I'm with a crowd of people or whether I'm all alone just reading a book. I'm comfortable, because I am doing conscientiously what I need to do. Because I know I'm constantly growing. Now I'll tell you a story about an old couple who are well, whose life together after recovery has been one of happiness, with the normal aches and pains of normal living. All right? This old couple's getting ready to go to bed. And he won't shut up. She's trying to get to sleep, and he won't shut up. He's giving way to his own sanctity, yakking about how good God had been to them through their lives. And so this is what he was saying, sitting on the side of the bed. They're in their upper 90s.
Hey, we've been married 76 years. I'd never been apart even for a day. No serious illness. Wonderful children and marvelous grandchildren. God's been good to us. And I've noticed lately that God has taken a very active personal part in my life. The other night, honey, I got up to go to the bathroom, and I opened the door, and God turned the light on for me. And when I was all finished, He turned it out.
And the wife got up on one elbow and said, "Yo, fool, you went and squirted in the fridge again." Good night. I'll see you. That's all. Okay.